On February 1st, 1944, a 20-year-old deer hunter from rural Pennsylvania saved his platoon by doing the one thing no soldier is ever supposed to do. He made himself the target. Private First Class Alton Knappenberger lay atop a bare knoll near Cisterna, Italy. His Browning automatic rifle aimed at German machine gun nests 85 yards away. Bullets tore the air around him. Shells exploded at his feet. His uniform was shredded. For 2 hours, he held that position, alone, exposed, drawing the fire of every German gun in range. Doctrine said, "Take cover, stay low, withdraw." Knappenberger did the opposite. He climbed onto the highest ground and stayed there. By afternoon, this skinny farm boy with 0 confirmed kills would account for nearly 60 German casualties and break an assault that should have annihilated his company. They called it the human bait trick. To understand how a Depression-era hunter used deer-stalking instincts to defeat a Wehrmacht platoon, you need to see what he saw that morning. If you find this kind of forgotten courage as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of defiance and sacrifice deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help ensure they aren't forgotten. On the morning of February 1st, 1944, Private First Class Alton W. Knappenberger lay exposed atop a bare knoll near Cisterna di Littoria, Italy, watching German MG-42 nests systematically shred his platoon from positions 85 to 100 yards away. The Browning automatic rifle in his hands weighed 19.4 pounds loaded, maybe 15 rounds left in the magazine. His fatigues showed fresh tears where 7.92 millimeter rounds had missed by millimeters. The dirt around him was chewed into craters from mortar shells that had exploded within feet of his position. He had been on that knoll for nearly 2 hours, alone, in the single most exposed position on the battlefield. Every German gun within 300 yards had shifted fire toward him. Doctrine said, "Seek cover, stay low, suppress and withdraw." Alton Knappenberger did the opposite. He crawled toward the guns and positioned himself on the highest ground he could find. 20 years old, deer hunter from Spring Mount, Pennsylvania, 5'6", 118 pounds. 0 confirmed kills before this morning. By 1400 hours, he would be credited with killing or wounding nearly 60 Wehrmacht soldiers and single-handedly breaking a counterattack that should have annihilated his company. His tactic has since been called the human bait trick, drawing every gun toward himself so his brothers could escape. If you want to understand how a Depression-era farm boy killed or wounded 60 German soldiers using the same instincts he used waiting for deer in Pennsylvania timber, you need to see what he saw that morning. Alton Warren Knappenberger was born December 31st, 1923, in Spring Mount, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Rural country, tight-knit farming communities. His father worked in a factory. His mother kept house. Money was scarce. Alton grew up hunting out of necessity. From age 12, he stalked white-tailed deer in the hills and woods around Spring Mount. His family needed the meat. His primary technique was the elevated position, finding high ground, a rise, or a hilltop blind positioned above the deer trails. The logic was tactical. Height equals visibility. Deer move low, rarely look up. The hunter waits, sees everything, controls the field. Patience was the skill. Sit motionless for hours without flinching. One shot, one deer. Ammunition cost money. The 30-30 cartridges his family used were expensive during the Depression. You did not waste rounds. You waited for the clean shot, read the animal's movement, then took it. Reading terrain was survival. Before settling into position, Alton studied the landscape. Where would the deer emerge? What paths did they favor? Where would they pause to feed or scan for threats? The hunter positioned himself to observe all approaches. He controlled the geometry of the encounter. Before the war, Alton worked odd jobs, farm labor, factory work. The labor built endurance, but it was the hunting that built the instincts that would save him at Anzio. March 1943. Pearl Harbor had happened 16 months earlier. The Selective Service Act drafted Alton Knappenberger. He did not volunteer. The Army sent him to infantry training. He learned the M1 Garand first, 8 rounds, semi-automatic, 9.5 pounds. Then they assigned him as a BR gunner. The Browning automatic rifle M1918A2 was the squad automatic weapon. It weighed 19.4 pounds loaded, more than twice the Garand. Magazine capacity was 20 rounds instead of 8. The bar had 2 rates of fire: slow, 300 to 450 rounds per minute, and fast, 500 to 650. Both fired the same .30-06 Springfield cartridge as the Garand. The bar was heavier, slower to reload, harder to control, but it provided suppressive fire the Garand could not deliver. Doctrine said, use the bar from cover, stay low, provide suppression for advancing riflemen. Alton learned the manual, but hunting had taught him something else. Go high, see more, control the field. September 1943. The 3rd Infantry Division, nicknamed the Rock of the Marne, shipped to Italy. Alton was assigned to Company C, 30th Infantry Regiment. They landed at Salerno in Operation Avalanche. 4 months of brutal fighting followed. The Volturno River, the approaches to Monte Cassino, the winter mud and shelling. Alton performed his duties, carried the bar, fired when ordered, kept his head down. His platoon called him Nappy. He did not stand out. No awards, no commendations, no reputation for recklessness. Just another rifleman in a rifle company grinding through Italy. January 22nd, 1944. Operation Shingle. The Allies landed at Anzio, 30 miles south of Rome. The objective? Outflank the German Gustav Line and open the road to Rome. The landing caught the Germans by surprise, but Major General John P. Lucas hesitated. Instead of advancing immediately toward the Alban Hills, he consolidated the beachhead. That hesitation gave Field Marshal Albert Kesselring time to react. Within 72 hours, German reinforcements encircled the beachhead. Elite units, including the Hermann Göring Panzer Division and the 3rd Panzer Grenadier Division, battle-hardened troops from North Africa and Sicily. By late January, the Allies were trapped in a perimeter barely 7 miles deep and 16 miles wide. The Germans launched relentless counterattacks to drive the Allies back into the sea. February 1st, 1944. The road to Cisterna. The Anzio beachhead was supposed to be a breakthrough. Instead, it became a trap. The initial landings on January 22nd met almost no resistance. Troops came ashore at Anzio and Nettuno expecting a fight. They found empty beaches. For roughly 48 hours, the road to Rome stood open. Then General Lucas stopped. He ordered his forces to dig in and consolidate rather than push inland. That decision gave Kesselring the time he needed. By January 24th, German reinforcements were pouring into the hills surrounding the beachhead. Panzer divisions, artillery batteries, veteran infantry. Kesselring assembled 14 divisions in 72 hours. The Allies found themselves boxed into a killing zone barely 7 miles deep. Every road, every field, every farmhouse became contested ground. Company C of the 30th Infantry spent the next week in that grinder. Mud sucked at their boots. Cold rain soaked through their uniforms. They slept in flooded foxholes and ate cold rations when they ate at all. The Germans shelled them constantly, random, methodical bombardments that shredded nerves and killed men without warning. Knappenberger carried his BAR, dug his holes, pulled his shifts. He did not complain. Nobody did. Complaining accomplished nothing. By January 31st, the orders came. Push toward Cisterna. Intelligence reported light German presence. The terrain was open farmland. Flat fields bordered by irrigation ditches, scattered farmhouses, low stone walls. Minimal cover. Company C moved out at dawn on February 1st. They advanced in staggered lines across the fields, quiet, tense, watching the tree lines. Then, the MG-42s opened up. The first burst cut down 3 men instantly. The second swept the line. Within seconds, the entire platoon was pinned in the open. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, just flat ground and incoming fire from multiple directions. The ambush was perfect. 3 MG-42 nests, one at 85 yards, 2 more at 100 and 120, formed a crossfire that turned the open field into a kill zone. German infantry advanced behind the guns, moving through irrigation ditches and using stone walls for cover. The Americans had nowhere to go. Advancing meant running into machine gun fire. Retreating meant exposing their backs. Staying meant dying slowly. Men pressed themselves into the dirt, trying to become invisible. Some screamed for medics. Others lay, motionless, already gone. The MG-42s fired in short, controlled bursts, 7 to 10 rounds each, conserving ammunition while maintaining suppression. Professional, methodical, deadly. Knappenberger flattened out like the others, his face pressed against cold mud. Bullets snapped overhead. But while the other men kept their heads down, Knappenberger was watching, reading the battlefield the way he read Pennsylvania timber. Where was the fire coming from? What angles mattered? He spotted the knoll, a small rise maybe 30 yards forward, barely 3 feet higher than the surrounding field. Exposed. Suicide ground. But it offered elevation. From there, he could see the machine gun positions clearly. He could return fire with accuracy instead of shooting blind. Every instinct from training told him to stay flat. Every instinct from hunting told him to go high. He chose the hunt. Knappenberger began crawling forward. Not backward toward safety, forward toward the guns, inch by inch. Elbows and knees, dragging the 19-pound bar through the mud. Men near him stared in disbelief. Nobody crawls toward machine guns. He reached the knoll and pulled himself up onto the barren rise, completely exposed now. The lone American between 3 German nests and a pinned platoon. Knappenberger settled onto the knoll, the bar braced against his shoulder. From 3 feet of elevation, the battlefield transformed. He could see everything. The muzzle flashes from the MG-42 nests, the German infantry moving through the ditches, the exact geometry of the kill zone. This was the hunter's advantage. Height equals visibility. Control the high ground, control the engagement. The nearest machine gun, 85 yards out, spotted him immediately. The crew swung the MG-42 toward the knoll. Bullets cracked past Knappenberger's head, close enough to feel the displacement. He did not flinch. He rose to one knee, sighted down the bar's iron sights, and squeezed the trigger. A controlled burst, 5 rounds. 2 of the German crew dropped. The third staggered, wounded. The gun went silent. Movement to his left. 2 German grenadiers broke from cover, charging the knoll with potato masher grenades, maybe 20 yards out. Knappenberger swung the bar smoothly. No panic. Just the same patience he used tracking deer. 1 burst. Both men went down. He wasn't thinking about heroism. He wasn't thinking about glory. His mind operated on pure survival logic, honed by years in Pennsylvania timber. Find the threat, neutralize it, move to the next target. Stay calm. Breathe steady. Make every shot count. The second MG-42 nest opened fire, 100 yards out, then the third. Within seconds, German infantry began redirecting toward the lone figure on the knoll. Mortars adjusted their aim. A 20mm anti-aircraft gun swiveled in his direction. Every gun on the German line was now firing at Knappenberger. Exactly as he intended. The volume of fire became deafening. Hundreds of rounds converged on the knoll. MG-42 bursts, rifle fire, mortar shells. Dirt geysered around Knappenberger. Bullets snapped past so close they tugged at his uniform. The air itself seemed to vibrate with incoming lead. The second MG-42 nest, 100 yards out, poured fire directly at him. Knappenberger tracked the muzzle flash, adjusted for distance, and squeezed the trigger. Controlled bursts. The gun fell silent. Crew down. Then the 20mm anti-aircraft gun joined the fight. Designed to shoot down aircraft, now trained on a single soldier. The first round cratered the knoll 2 feet to Knappenberger's right. He shifted aim, fired a sustained burst at the gun emplacement. One crewman dropped, wounded. The others abandoned the weapon. Knappenberger had become the center of gravity of the entire firefight. Every German gun within 300 yards focused on the lone American on the knoll, while the pinned platoon behind him went unnoticed. His hunting discipline held him together. Control breathing. Inhale, exhale, squeeze. Read movement. Watch for muzzle flashes. Track infantry shifting positions. Don't rush. Every round matters. The chaos around him faded into background noise. He existed in the same calm focus he'd found waiting motionless in Pennsylvania tree stands. Behind him, the surviving Americans began to understand what was happening. One man, skinny, quiet Nappy, was holding back an entire German assault, alone, exposed, unmoving. It shouldn't have been possible. But the knoll still stood, and Knappenberger was still firing. The bar kicked lighter. Knappenberger felt it immediately, the recoil softening, the rhythm changing. Magazine nearly empty. He dropped behind the knoll's crest and checked his ammunition pouch. 3 rounds left, maybe 4. 2 hours of continuous firing had drained everything. The choice crystallized with brutal clarity. Stay on the knoll, safe but useless, and watch his platoon get overrun, or crawl down into the kill zone and find ammunition. He chose without hesitation. Knappenberger rolled over the knoll's edge and started crawling downhill, back toward the carnage between the lines. The German MG-42s tracked his movement instantly. Bullets tore into the ground inches from his face. Dirt kicked into his eyes. Tracers snapped past his head. He pressed himself flatter, digging elbows and knees into the mud, dragging the bar beside him. 15 yards. It felt like a mile. He reached the body of a wounded American lying crumpled in the open. No time to check if the man was alive. Knappenberger's fingers fumbled at the soldier's webbing, pulling rifle clips from the ammunition belt. M1 Garand clips. 8 rounds each, 30-06 Springfield. Same caliber as the BIR. They would work. He stuffed the clips into his uniform and began dragging himself backward. Every inch was a gamble. German fire intensified, sensing he was vulnerable. Bullets stitched the ground around him. A mortar round exploded 10 yards to his left. Knappenberger rolled back, behind the knoll, gasping, hands shaking. The scavenged clips clutched against his chest. Still alive. Still fighting. Reloading the bar with M1 Garand clips was never taught in training. The bar used 20-round box magazines. Garand clips held 8 rounds each. Knappenberger had to strip the rounds from the clips manually and feed them into the bar's magazine one by one. Slow, painstaking, exposed. His fingers were numb from cold and adrenaline. He fumbled the first round, dropped it in the mud, forced himself to slow down. Breathe. One round at a time. A mortar shell hit 15 feet away. Shrapnel screamed overhead. Knappenberger ducked instinctively, then resumed loading. Another round into the magazine, then another. The Germans realized he was still alive. Fire intensified. MG-42 bursts raking the knoll. Rifle rounds cracking past, more mortars adjusting their aim. The dirt around him churned into craters. He kept loading. Something had changed inside him. Minutes earlier, he'd been a scared kid from Pennsylvania, carrying a gun he barely understood. Now his hands moved with mechanical precision. His mind operated with cold clarity. Fear still existed. Distant, acknowledged, irrelevant. What mattered was the magazine, the rounds, the next shot. He locked the final clip into place. 17 rounds. Not a full load, but enough. Movement across the field caught his eye. German infantry, 20, maybe 30 men, emerging from cover, forming assault lines. A coordinated push. They were coming for the knoll. Knappenberger shifted the bar back into position, braced the stock against his shoulder. Controlled his breathing. Inhale, exhale. Waited for them to get closer. The German assault platoon came in a coordinated rush, 20 to 30 men advancing in staggered lines across the open field. They expected the knoll to be silent by now. One American couldn't hold that position for 2 hours. Knappenberger opened fire. Disciplined bursts. 3 to 5 rounds each. He swept the bar left to right, tracking movement, dropping attackers systematically. The lead Germans went down. The second wave hesitated, then pressed forward. Knappenberger adjusted aim and cut them down too. The 2-hour crescendo peaked. MG-42 fire, mortar explosions, rifle cracks, screams, the metallic stutter of the BR. Smoke drifted across the field. Brass casings piled at Knappenberger's feet. His hands burned from the bar's heated barrel. The Germans faltered. They'd expected to overrun a depleted position. Instead, fire poured from the knoll with unrelenting accuracy. Men fell. The advance stalled. Confusion rippled through their ranks. How many Americans were on that knoll? Just one. A bullet tore through Knappenberger's sleeve, grazing skin. Another punched a hole through his canteen. A mortar shell exploded close enough to throw dirt over his back. He ignored it all, aimed, fired, reloaded. The bar clicked empty. Magazine spent. The German assault collapsed. Survivors retreated toward their lines, dragging wounded. The field fell eerily quiet. Knappenberger tumbled off the knoll, legs giving out. He lay in the mud, gasping, vision blurred, barely conscious. Every muscle trembled. His uniform was shredded, but he was alive. Behind him, the remnants of his platoon began crawling towards safety. The assault was broken. The battlefield fell silent. No machine guns, no mortars, just wind across empty fields and the distant sound of men crawling through mud. American survivors pulled themselves toward friendly lines, those who could still move. Of the nearly 200 men in Company C who'd advanced that morning, fewer than a dozen made it back. Knappenberger was among them, unharmed. Not a scratch despite 2 hours under concentrated fire. Medics reached him first, checking for wounds they couldn't believe weren't there. Officers arrived next, stunned, asking questions he couldn't quite answer. Comrades stared at him differently now, not as quiet Nappy who carried the bar, but as something else. Something inexplicable. Knappenberger sat in the mud, the empty bar across his lap, trying to process what had happened. He hadn't climbed that knoll for glory. He hadn't thought about medals or heroism. He'd simply refused to watch his friends die when he could do something, anything, to stop it. The hunting instincts his father taught him, the patience learned waiting in Pennsylvania timber, had translated into 2 hours of hell that somehow kept him alive. Weeks later, the paperwork would begin. Witness statements, officer reports. The phrase extraordinary heroism appearing in official documents. Eventually, the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration, presented for actions on February 1st, 1944, near Cisterna. But that morning, sitting in the mud, Knappenberger was just a farm boy from Spring Mount who'd done what needed doing. A boy who grew up hunting deer, saved dozens of men by becoming the bait no one else dared to be, and changed the course of a battle standing alone on a bare patch of earth. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served.